Okay, cool. It is 12 noon, and we've got people signing in here, but I'll go ahead and get us started. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and first and foremost, thank you to my panelists this afternoon who have joined us to talk all about getting your music playlisted. My name is Billy Walsh. I'm the Artist Community Manager for Sofar Sounds and the host of this afternoon's event. So, in the same realm as our webinar last week, which covered live streaming, what we're trying to do right now is provide additional value to our artist community in the wake of COVID-19 and beyond, so that right now in this moment, we find opportunities to learn and grow from experts like the ones sitting here on this online event with me right now around all of the different things that we can do to continue pursuing our craft as musicians and in the music industry, even though we can't get on the road and tour and play live shows right now, which is extremely debilitating and really pulls people out of their comfort zones. But I think it's really important to recognize the opportunities that we have. And I think it's the responsibility of organizations like Sofar Sounds, which I represent, to bring that kind of value to our artist community. So that's why we're all here today. And the topic of conversation today will be centered all around the intricacies of navigating your music as a performer and getting the attention of all different kinds of playlists online, increasing your streams, increasing your marketability, your fan base. All of those good things can be done through playlisting. And I'm really excited to get to introduce our panelists this afternoon. I'll start first with Mr. Mike Warner. Mike Warner is California-based and rapidly emerging as a new face and voice of the streaming world. He's got a multifaceted role as a freelance streaming A&R, and it's allowed him to develop and execute strategic streaming campaigns for a wide variety of artists and labels. Additionally, he's also the author of the book Work Hard, Playlist Hard, which is all about navigating digital playlisting, and his mission is very simple: to help the music industry find its feet in this new terrain. So welcome, Mike. Really glad to have you.
Thank you for the kind intro, Billy. And I just wanted to say, I saw Chris showing up in the comments. I have to shout out Chris from Sofar. Thank you so much for originally connecting us as well. Truly grateful to be here and meet the other panelists and meet everyone that's attending as well. Thank you.
Right on. Cool. Thanks, Mike. Next, a very last minute addition, but so thankful that she's here with us. We have FLAVIA from Los Angeles, a performer with us at Sofar Sounds, and honestly, one of the emerging new artists in pop music right now. She just released a new single called Them, which is available everywhere that you stream your music, and it's a beautiful, beautiful new song. Also comes with a music video that's just incredible to watch. And FLAVIA has a lot of experience on the road, not only with Sofar, but just touring and growing her brand and her fan base over these past many years, and has also dipped a toe in the playlisting world as well, releasing singles and albums that have found a lot of success, getting playlisted editorially as well as from independent curators. Welcome, FLAVIA.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And last but not least, we have my dear friend, Mike Murphy, out of New York. Murph here, as he likes to be called, is the founder and creator of Studio Talk. Murph's goal is to help artists and managers build a foundation for their careers so that they can take their passion for music and turn it into a full-time career. So he's no stranger to the music business, having spent the last 10 years as a personal manager, industry exec, and entrepreneur. And most recently has created a course called How to Get Playlisted in 30 Days, which centers all around a lot of the things that we'll be talking about today. So similarly to everybody else here on the panel, Murph is set out to create an online course with that is detailed, streamlined, and has a realistic price for artists and managers that are just starting. So welcome, Murph. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words, man.
Cool. And just to answer the question here, we will actually have this recorded after the fact. So anybody that is looking to watch the recording afterwards can always tune in once we post it up shortly after the event concludes. But really excited to go get started here. We've got a ton of different questions that came in from the individuals that had RSVP'd ahead of time, sent out a short questionnaire there to folks just to get an idea of what kind of content and questions are attendees want to see covered today around getting playlisted. So I wanted to thank everybody in advance for sending those questions along. And additionally, keep in mind that we'll be covering the content and questions that we prepared ahead of time based on that input for the first 45 minutes or so of this event. And then we'll leave about 15 to 20 minutes at the end, depending on how much time we have for live Q&A. Just a little bit of housekeeping here before we get started, just for any attendees that are looking to submit questions. Keep in mind that there are two functions on Zoom webinars. There is the chat function, which is more for just quick shout outs, where you're from, saying hello, even just making any comments. Feel free to comment in the chat. But if you do wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A function. That will allow us to actually filter the questions and make sure that we're addressing them in real time. And we'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can before the end. And of course, we'll leave room to answer questions offline after the event if anybody has any lingering questions they hadn't yet gotten answered. But now that that's all covered, I think we have an opportunity to kind of dive right in. And I'll go ahead and ask the first question, just starting in order here. I'll start with Mr. Mike Warner, just to ask this to you to get started. But everybody feel free to chime in after Mike's spoken. And I'll go ahead and dig in a little bit around pitching your music to playlists, whether it's, brands like Spotify or independent curators. I think it's something that can be really tricky for musicians that are just starting out in the playlisting world. So as a general question to get us started, I'm wondering, with so many options and directions that artists can go in the playlisting world, is there a preferred path and best practices for independent musicians who want their music considered? What do you recommend as like a general first step in getting your music playlisted?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to skip straight past the obvious one that everyone feels like they need to say, which is you have to have good music. We can skip straight past that. What you need to have is you need to have a presence. So you need to appear active on all of these DSPs. So if you're expecting people to be playlisting you on Spotify, you need to claim your artist profile. You need some photos on there. You need a bio. You need links to your social media. You need somebody that finds you to look at your profile and go, okay, they're actually on here. They're active. They're paying attention. And that applies to all the other DSPs, Apple Music for artists, Amazon for artists, the list goes on. From there, then the outreach is very different depending on the curator. Obviously, Spotify, if you're looking to get into editorial, they've made it so that they've opened up the process to everyone within Spotify for artists. So that is your first place that you would be pitching your music. And that is available to everyone. You go to artists.spotify.com. You have an upcoming release that is not out yet. You'll see the option to submit your music, tag it with genre and mood, include more information about the song, which is going to feed the algorithm. And you also have the opportunity that it may get in front of the right people within the editorial team, and you may see some placement there. A nice bonus is if you do it at least 7 days before release, your song will go into release radar for all of your followers. So whether that's 5 followers or 5,000 or more, you're making sure that you're going into release radar for all of the followers as well. So that's the first starting point. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but I want to give everyone else an opportunity here as well.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I just to kind of piggyback off that too, I think just like Mike said, those are the basic things. Like, we already know you need good music, but just like Mike was saying, a lot of people don't understand that you now have access to submit your music on the back end. So that's a great first step. To again, kind of piggyback off that, I would say the next best thing to do is you want to go out and search and try and find these curators on your own. Do a quick Google search, Spotify playlist curator, Apple Music playlist curator, follow them on social media, but do not DM them. Do not spam them. You really want to build a relationship with these people, right? That is what, artists at big labels have over you. They have people that are at the label that have those relationships. You don't have that yet, and you're trying to get there. So you should really be doing this in conjunction with what Mike had just said. You want to upload your music on the back end. Hey, you're doing it the way that, Spotify wants everybody to do it, quote unquote. But then you should also be taking, your time and energy and efforts into your own hands and going out and trying to find these people, build relationships with them. So you want to be proactive, and you want to start that now. Start to build that relationship now, so that in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, when you're ready to drop your next song or your next project, you have, kind of a starting point with those people, and you don't have to start from scratch. Again, when you do follow these people, it's really about engaging. Don't even hit them on anything with an ask. Comment on their stuff, like their stuff, really show that you're a person who cares about what they're doing. They'll over time start to see your name pop up over and over. And then you can reference that when it is time to reach out. Hey, we had this Twitter moment where we were talking about, the Grammys, and I said this point, whatever. You're just giving them a reference point to say, okay, I kind of understand that person and where they could go. And you're opening the door for an opportunity. So just like I was saying before, I think it's in conjunction with those other things.
Yeah, I think from the artist side, I know that I feel a little daunted by the fact that, getting playlisting on Spotify with Spotify editorial playlists feels so out of my control sometimes. And so the independent curated playlists is something where, like, I like to think outside the box, kind of like you were saying, Mike, where you find them on, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and follow them. That's been a huge help, because some of these independent playlisters, they've given me a lot of support in the past, and it's really helped my songs kind of break through the noise. And once you start getting on all these playlists, then Spotify notices the algorithms, and then you actually have a better chance of getting on some editorial playlists. My only thing I'd say there, Mike, you already covered a lot, but it gets so chaotic, and especially when you're releasing, a single every couple months, I like to keep a really concise spreadsheet of, okay, what's the playlist? How many followers does it have? What kind of style is it? Because at least for me, sometimes my music changes. Sometimes it's a ballad. Sometimes it's a little more like of an upbeat remix. And you don't want to waste people's time reaching out if they're like an EM playlist. So just keeping track of also whether you've already contacted them, if you are going to reach out and DM them, and having this spreadsheet that for every release, you can kind of tick the boxes and have a really organized system for reaching out and not bugging people too much.
So at the end of the day, it sounds like, being vigilant without being too, without poking the bear too much, and just staying really organized around who you're contacting with, who you're, in touch with, and who you're working towards building that connection with, can really help cover some ground for people trying to get playlisted for the first time. Great. Cool. And then differently, I wanted to jump a little bit between, we touched a little bit on the elusiveness of editorial playlists, and how I think that really is the tunnel vision that a lot of artists tend to get in terms of, Discover Weekly and Rap Caviar and, any kind of editorial playlist that Spotify is really pumping out and pushing forward. That's what everybody sees first and foremost. But what is the difference in FLAVIA? I'll bounce this back your way, just because you were just touching on it, and then we can cover it in a little more detail with Mike and Murph. But what sort of strategies do you see that playlist curators use to influence their decision to decide, I want to playlist this music or not? And do you find that it's mostly they're actively searching for new music? Like, have you ever been approached by a playlister around adding your music? Or is it more so really leaning into perfecting that pitch and finding the right people to build a connection with and eventually pitch your music to? And then how does that differ from the more editorial playlists, like the Spotify playlists that you've been on?
Yeah, I think there's so much music out there, and there's so many people probably already contacting these playlist curators that I don't personally get reached out a ton by them. I do more of the reaching out, I would say, and then trying to build that relationship. But it's, anything's possible. But I do think, especially for some of the ones that have a higher fan base, they're probably getting hit up a decent amount. And in comparison to the Spotify editorial playlists, I've had just as good a traction on independent playlists as I have on Spotify. I remember getting one playlist that had maybe 20,000 listeners for an independent one, but they were really, really active. And I got, 30,000+ streams just from that playlist in the first week or two, which, as an independent artist
Wow.
is pretty great to have that kind of traction. And then I got on, New Music Friday UK, and it had way more listeners, but they obviously weren't as active. And I got about the same amount of streams on that single from that. So you can, some of these independent ones, they have a fraction of what Spotify has, but they're really passionate listeners, and maybe they'll follow you and they'll save the song and they'll listen over and over again. So it's hard to say what's more beneficial. It just kind of depends, I think, on the playlist and the users listening.
Anything to add from you fellas on that?
I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with all that. There's no real one size fits all. It really is about trying different tactics and strategies, and it depends on the song and it depends on the curator. I would just say, like, don't get so stuck in your ways that you're not open to trying new things as well. So, because that's also another creative part, right? It's the marketing aspect. It's not just creating music, but it's coming up with a creative way to get it out to people. So just be open, and try to find those different avenues that pop up. Going back a little bit to kind of the original question, differences between pitching the two. I think it's going to be rare that independent curators are going to reach out to you. They're just going to post it if they like it, and that's like great. You know what I mean? That's a win-win for them and you. So I don't think you necessarily need to, or you shouldn't be expecting that to happen, right? That's just a great added bonus if they reach out. Especially be wary of people that may reach out and ask for money. You know what I mean? That could be one scenario where they're doing that. Hey, I have this playlist, and they're going to charge you to get on that. That's just payola, you know what I mean? That's been around for a really long time. Just something to be aware of. And, try and steer clear of that, because it's pay for play. And if you start paying, then you're always going to be kind of beholden to that. And then you may get stuck, and then, it's not going to work out financially for you. So I would say just be cautious of that. And then in terms of the curators, on the editorial side at the DSPs, they get inundated with so much music in terms of like how they're narrowing it down. I think they are, that's why they need those people in place, because it is their taste as well. They're trying to add a human element and not just make it algorithms. So I think it depends on what mood they're going through, what playlist they're working. So it's super important to just pay attention to who you're pitching and understand the playlist that you're actually trying to be on. So yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that as well. Obviously we know that Spotify for Artists allows people to pitch music to editorial within the site if you have an upcoming release. We know that's not the case with Amazon yet, and Apple Music and Deezer Backstage and all of these other tools that we have. But that being said, it's safe to assume, and I hate making assumptions, but it's safe to assume that a lot of artists on here are do-it-yourself or independent artists, which means you are going through your own distributor. So you don't have a record label going in pitching your tracks to editorial teams. What a lot of these distributors have that they don't advertise for obvious reasons is a creator services team. Now, I'm not telling you to go and reach out to your distributor today and say, give me access to the creator services team. You need to be completely ready. You need to have that track that is absolute gold. You need to have the story. You need to have your marketing plan. You need to come very strong to them, because you only get one shot with things like this. And if you come with a weak song, then you may not be able to get them again in the future. But if you do come to them, you've got the song, you've got the story, you've got the marketing plan, you may find that they are able to actually help you. And they may consider taking that song and pitching it to editorial, not just Spotify, but the other DSPs as well. And it's not uncommon for these distributors to get behind them. I mean, if you follow them on social media, they will proudly brag about an artist that they've put out that's on billboards in Times Square, or they've been added to all these playlists, or they got a massive sync and things like that. So there are opportunities like that out there as you grow and as your music gets to that level. Don't feel like you need to go running to a major. I mean, for some people that may be their goal, that's fine, but you can do this, and there are people that can help you within your distributor that you're using as well.
I actually just want to touch on something.
Go ahead.
Sorry, as Mike said about the story, I think it's really important. You know, when you go and submit on Spotify, it asks you for kind of a description of the song. And I think it's really important to figure out what is unique about, what's different about your song. You know, let's say it's a song about love and there are millions of relationship songs. Instead of saying, okay, you know, this song's about love and a relationship, what was it about that relationship that was different from another thing? What was it about the feeling? What's the kind of message you want to spread? I think for me, and this is just my mission as an artist, I like to make music with a really powerful cause, whether it was my first single, I did an anti-bullying Be Kind campaign. My second single, I came out as queer on Billboard Pride. My most recent single was for Trans Day Visibility. So for me, my story is always something really deeply rooted in activism and, you know, just kind of find your unique twist, your own story on that song, because otherwise, if you're not passionate about your story when you're describing it to them, when they're reading that, they're not going to be passionate about it. So just find something special about it too. Even when you're talking about it in, you know, PR, whether it's for playlisting or PR or on socials, and like how you talk about the song, just find its voice.
That's so interesting to me, you know, how you're able to build those campaigns, not only for marketing purposes, but because it's something that you're genuinely passionate about, Flavia, something that's really important to you. You know, and I think that gets a little lost in the weeds for artists that are really trying to hit that next milestone or, you know, find that next opportunity is, you know, why are you doing this? Are you distributing this just to get streams, or are you actually trying to get on this playlist to reach a wider audience and spread this message that you really truly believe in? And so I'll bounce to the next question here, and anybody feel free to jump in if you have anything that comes to mind. But I'm curious now, with this new generation that we're living in around how we consume music, I think that artists' approach to releasing new music and what that story is that they're trying to tell has changed quite a bit from when we were growing up or when our parents were, you know, buying albums at record stores. Not that people don't still do that, but it's very different. So with this idea of the playlist almost replacing the album consumption in such a way, what are your general thoughts on how playlisting strategy has influenced how artists release and create new music? What has the impact been, you know, for you personally, Flavia? I think you touched on it a little bit with your campaigns, but in general, how has the world changed in terms of shifting their strategy to playlisting rather than traditional album cycles?
I think it's, for starters, it's made it even more of a singles-based market than it ever has been before. I love an album. I'm working on my album right now. So, you know, there's always going to be the album fans and artists that want to make albums. But I do think it's allowed people that don't have that giant body of work to be able to continuously release music pretty regularly without the pressure of needing this, you know, huge album. I also think it's given independent artists an opportunity to be heard by potentially thousands of people that would otherwise have never found their music. You know, I think back in the day, you had to know a band or an artist in order to get their music, because you were actively going to a store to buy it. So it's just opened up a lot of opportunity for discovery and for indie artists to break through the noise where it might have otherwise been tough.
Yeah, I think, you know, to answer the question, how has it influenced the way they release music? I think now they're able to kind of, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Some people are able to utilize it for good and continue to put out a lot of good music, but then sometimes the flip side, the negative side of that is if you get caught up in trying to chase that algorithm, right? And so your focus only becomes, oh my God, I'm just going to release this song and it's going to be here. And when you start to do that, when you start to get too stuck in your ways about trying to game the system, you lose the artistry, you lose the soul of the music. And so you're going to suffer long term. So I direct people kind of away from that, right? Don't game the algorithm. You should be focusing on making great music and building out your story and building out your fan base. So although you need this, and it's a very essential part for you to scale up your music and your audience, you should only be doing it when the time's right. Like you should, when you're first starting out, you can kind of dabble in it to test the waters, come to panels like these, get some more information on it, but your focus should be trying to perfect your craft and be the best in the world. Now, the best in the world, you should just understand that you can limit that. You can be the best in the world in whatever your city is for whatever your genre is, right? Start there. Go very, very niche and go very, very small, and then dominate that and learn how to become a real artist and learn how to connect with fans. Then you can start to scale up, because just like anything else, like if you are, you know, say you do have a record and you do pitch it and it blows up and you become Fetty Wap, you know, overnight, and you have this, you're this one-hit wonder. If you don't have that foundation of what it means to build up your music and what it means to build a connection with a fan, that's just not going to last, and you're going to fizzle out. So and you're not going to make the bulk of your money from playlisting anyways. So if you don't know how to perform, if you don't know how to build a relationship with your fans, this isn't going to work. This should just be fuel to the fire, right? You already have sparks going, you already have a fire, and then boom, gasoline comes on, and then you're out of here. Because the goal is to have a long-term career. That's the goal. The goal is to be able to do this for the rest of your life. It's not to be able to get hot right now and then be done in a year. So I always just say, yes, it's an important part of your strategy. Don't make it the sole focus of your strategy.
In that same vein, I'll say real quickly, Mike, not to interrupt, but just jumping off of that really quickly, and I'll bounce this your way, Mr. Warner. I'm wondering, because like Flavia had mentioned, she sees thousands of streams in some opportunities, you know, where you're added to a playlist that is very popular or has a dedicated listening base. And so all of a sudden you've got thousands of people that you weren't engaged with before that you actually may have never performed in front of in the audience that are now listening to your music. So I'm wondering, from that standpoint, when somebody does get to that point of view where it's even, you know, if it's 10 new listeners or if it's 2,000 new listeners, how can artists maintain engagement with those listeners and fans that have discovered them on playlists after the fact? What are some of the ways that artists can go about ensuring that while these new people are listening to their music, they don't just listen once, move on, and never again? How do they maintain that engagement?
Yeah, let me talk to that as a user and as an artist. So for me as a user, as a music lover, when I listen to a playlist or a radio station just starts within Spotify while I'm doing something, if I hear a song I like, the first thing I do is I go to that artist page or their profile. I take a look. If they have a playlist with their entire catalog on there, or they have a recent album, I'll just go and hit play on that because I want to hear more from them. If I like what I hear, I hit follow. And then if I'm starting to fall in love with their music, I'll go to the About tab and I'll go follow them on their Twitter and Instagram, which should be linked on most DSPs. And, you know, from there, they've now got me as a follower on social media and on streaming. They know that if they do the right thing, they'll hit my release radar every time they have a new track coming out as well. On the other side of that, sort of touching on that from the artist side, of course, as I mentioned before, you need that presence. These people aren't going to be in front of you. You don't get to see them. You don't know who they are exactly. You have to just have a presence for them and make it welcoming. And by having that profile ready and saying, hey, here's links to my social media, here's a playlist with my entire catalog. I mean, the best thing that can happen the second someone discovers you is they go to your catalog playlist and they hit play. And instead of just listening to one of your songs, they play your entire catalog, your entire discography, whether it's 10 songs or 100 songs. That's a stream for each song. And you know, they may even follow that playlist if they like you as well. So having all of that in place, you know, you can't DM them directly, you don't know who they are, but if you found a way that's easy for them to find you on social media and follow you. That will help. The other side of that is when you log into your artist tools, Apple Music for Artists, Amazon, Spotify, you'll start to see where these listeners are coming from. So if you see a surge of listeners in a particular city, sometimes even within Apple Music, it'll show you a county as well. It'll get right down to the details. You could run some social media ads. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and just be very strategic. And if you look at your related artists, also known as fans also like, you could target it to people that like those artists on social media, are based in that location, and you can really fine tune it and get down to the point where maybe you can connect with some of those people that have heard you on Spotify recently or wherever they came across your music.
I would say, to piggyback off that too, is like, especially with an ad spend, really think about how much money you have from the jump. Don't just start throwing nickels and dimes at it, because it's not going to work, right? Again, we're talking about the strategy. So you want to make sure that you have a budget set aside, that you're willing to test things on, and understand that it is a test. You are going to constantly be testing the images, the graphics, the call to action, all of these different things. But I would say, to add on to that, to really build up engagement with these people, you want their email address. You want their email address, or you want their phone number. There's a whole bunch of different services out there that allow you to store all that information and properly reach out to them. But your focus, your goal should be to get their personal information. There's a reason that, all these social media sites and all the streaming sites are as valuable as they are. It's because they own people's data, right? So this is more of a long-term play, and you're going to constantly be doing this. At your live shows, at the merch table, you're gonna make sure you have that that email list sign up. But that should be your focus. Get their email list, because then you don't have to constantly run those ads to get them to check you out. You can go directly to your fans, and you can say, hey, I have a new song, here are all the DSPs, pick the one that you're on. So that should be like your long-term goal, to get that info. And also, don't abuse that info. You shouldn't be pinging them every day. I want to say that now. Again, it's like, these are your friends, so you need to respect their time, their privacy, much like you would anybody else.
And I try to engage really heavily with, I feel lucky that a lot of people do DM me on socials when they've heard my music. I think part of that is because of the cause behind the song sometimes. Like when I had my anti-bullying song, Hateful, I had a lot of kids. I got on a ton of different playlists for that. And I had a lot of people reaching out like, thank you, this song like really helped me in school this week and whatever. And so I think when people can relate to the song, they even more so, they want to reach out and they want to connect with you. And just staying, unless you have too many messages a day where you can't keep up with it, I think it's really great at this indie level to be really responsive with your fans, because I appreciate that so much when someone takes the time to actually listen to my music and reach out to me on socials and follow me and kind of do an across the board support of my art and my artistry. I really want to connect with them, and just, even if it's a thanks for listening, response, I try to stay up to date on that. And I think that means a lot to people when you actually, as an artist, they admire when you actually respond.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think it comes back to a bit of what we were talking about earlier, where it really matters to, along with a marketing plan, like Murph was saying, don't just throw your money out there. Don't just throw your music out there either, or your purpose out there. Really think through and craft, what are you trying to say? What message are you trying to get across? What audience are you trying to reach? And then from there, it's a stepping stone, where I love the advice of, once you've been able to identify with some of those analytics that something like Spotify can offer, where people are listening to your music, then you have an opportunity to strategize a bit more deeply as to, how am I going to advertise to this group of people or this community so that I can expand that, or that I can take advantage of the people that are listening and sharing my music in a place I haven't experienced before. So great insight there. Thank you all for sharing. Wanted to touch on something that I know a lot of people are really curious about too. We got multiple inquiries about this from the survey ahead of the event. And that's more tools for music distribution and just the additional tools that come into play outside of just logging into Spotify for artists and signing up. But rather, how do you navigate things like Ditto, DistroKid? You know, how can mostly and specifically independent artists ensure that they're using the right tools to get a higher chance at getting their songs playlisted? And what kind of impact do you think that these tools can have on the journey that these independent artists are trying to take?
I personally, it can be overwhelming to find a distribution company. I love to test them out. I've done songs with various distro companies across the board, and you can really tell. I firmly believe you can tell with one release how committed they are, how much they like your music, how hard they work. You know, my first single, I won't name the distro company, but I got myself on a ton of playlists, including editorials. And I'm like, if I, as the artist, am able to somehow do that, then, you know, my distribution company should be able to, you know, provide some, if you're taking that higher percentage, because this is, you know, technically what you're supposed to be able to help out with. I think they should be able to bring something to the table. And so I kept trying distro companies until I really found one that was so passionate, super responsive, constantly trying to playlist, updating me on you know, what they were working on, getting me on Vivo for my video, having Vivo tweet, you know. So I think you can really tell with one single whether a company is passionate and willing to put in the work and believes in your art. And if they don't, then you shouldn't be giving that higher percentage, and you should just be releasing it, just paying the, you know, CD Baby, or I don't remember the names of them all, but just paying that small fee to then keep your entire percentage.
Cool. I'll go ahead and jump into one more question before we get into some live Q&A. Some really great questions coming in that I want to make sure we get to. But yeah, just specifically one thing came up that I didn't even know about until I started researching for this event. And that is the concept of pre-saves, which to my understanding is a new tool for artists specifically on Spotify to allow their followers and people that may come across music that's upcoming, that has yet to be released, but will be released soon, to pre-save the music ahead of time so that when it does release, they're some of the first people to be able to stream it. How is this making an impact on the playlisting world, and how can artists use pre-saves and maybe other tools that I'm not aware of right now that we can talk about to really strategize releasing new music?
I think the pre-save really just, it's a good indicator that there's excitement around a project. I mean, I think you're really going to see this kind of at the, obviously at the major level, right? Because they have, you know, a lot more manpower and marketing dollars to build out an entire campaign where they're saying like, hey, in 3 months, this big thing is going to come. And so this whole album is going to come, or this song is going to come, or this video is going to come, and they can direct everyone to pre-save it. But again, that's just an indicator that people are interested. If you know, obviously we're talking to a lot of independent artists, up and coming artists. A way to utilize that, I would just say, again, you want to make sure that there's some meat to that. Don't just say, oh, I have a song coming out in a month. Like, yeah, you want to do that. That's great. But if you really want people to care and really want them to pre-save, you need to give them a reason, right? So I think, you know, FLAVIA, what you do with your music, like that's the exact way that you want to do it, right? You're tying it to a cause. There's a real meaning. You're giving people a reason to care. And if they do care, they're going to pre-save it. And again, that gives you leverage, right? So say you do have a song, there's a meaning, there's a big effort, you're really trying to push for it. You can then use that when you build that relationship with the curator. Again, a lot of these tactics just kind of get layered on top of one another, but you can then go to them and say, hey, look, I have 1,000 pre-saves of this song and it doesn't even drop for a month. You know, like I think it would work on X, Y, and Z playlist. Like, would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Like, that's a great way to tee it up. And yeah, you just want to try and leverage that as much as possible. But again, make sure that there's some substance there.
Yeah, great points. And I just wanted to add to that as well. So it seems new, but in a way it's not. It's always existed in one form or another. Back in the day, it used to be going into a record store, and getting a brown paper bag and writing your name and phone number on it to order that record that was coming out. And that would contribute to the sales on day one for that record, which could mean that a record could debut at #1 because so many people went into a store, put their name and number down and pre-ordered it. The same with iTunes. A lot of artists were doing this strategy where they were going, okay, we need X amount of pre-orders based on our genre to hopefully get #1. And for most of you, you may be aware of this, the iTunes store charts update hourly. So what artists were doing were being very specific about when they were releasing that track, getting all the pre-orders in early. The second that track goes live, it's #1 in the charts for 1 hour. So they screenshot it, they get bragging rights, and that helps them to drive everything else from that point forward. And those pre-orders really helped. Now with pre-saves, it's similar, except no one has to pay any money. They just have to log in with their account or put in an email address. But you get so many benefits. Yes, one is they pre-save it to their library so that they have the song there in their collection, which is great. The other one is you have pre-add, where you can actually pre-add it to your playlist. So if you have a playlist of music that you listen to and you go to the gym, as soon as that song is live, it's in your playlist. In addition to that, you can also capture followers for your artist profile, which means if they weren't following you for some reason, but they're a fan of yours, it's going to make sure that they're following you in the process. And you can also get them to follow your own playlist as well. So if you have that discography playlist, if you have another playlist you create as an artist, so one click, or maybe a few clicks in this case, can lead to so much more for the artist. Whereas for the fan or the listener, they've just gone, yeah, I clicked pre-save, it took 20 seconds, can't wait for your new song. You've captured them in multiple ways. So it is extremely valuable, even if you don't necessarily know what 1,000 pre-saves may mean for you. Look at it the other way. Go, it's 1,000 people that can't wait for your song, that are now following you, guaranteed, and are following your playlist and anywhere else that you've captured them. So there's so much value in it right now, even more than just the whatever dollar that you may have gotten from an iTunes pre-order.
Awesome. Cool. So we're going to move ahead and jump into a few audience questions that have been submitted. This first one, it's a little relevant to what we were talking about just to kick off the conversation, but wanted to dive into it a little bit more specifically. Ben Grace Music, hi Ben Grace, they submitted a question. Are there particular things that Spotify curators are looking for when you fill out the more info on the track field when you're submitting music? And I think we can broaden this a little bit and talk, specifically to more info around your track, but also just the way to optimize your profile to be most relevant to potential playlist curators. What are some of the tricks of the trade that artists should be aware of to make sure that their new music they're submitting, as well as their general artist profile, is optimized to have the best opportunities?
I was going to say, I think Mike hit on it earlier. It's really just about making sure you have all your information filled out, right? Like that is the most basic thing. It shows that you're active, that you care about what's going on in this platform. Because if you don't, and a curator goes to it, they're going to be like, oh, this guy doesn't, this artist really isn't engaged. They don't really care. If that is the case, like that song has to be like a crazy smash and they have other things going on with it that would allow that curator to get over that hurdle. But the goal for up and coming people is to make it easy for them to say yes, make it as easy as possible. So it's like you have the time right now to fill out all that information on every single one of your DSPs. So you need to be doing that. That's like the most basic thing. Put as many pictures as you can, fill out the full bio, like really put as much information as they allow you to do. The more, the better. And then in terms of like what exactly they may be looking for when you're on the back end and you're submitting in that kind of more info button, they just want what is the story behind this? Like what is going on? Why should I care about this? So, if you have a great producer on the record, a great feature on the record, if you had, a partnership with a major media outlet that's going to premiere the song, you definitely want to plug that in there. But yeah, just all the things that kind of surround the song you want to put in that field.
And just to touch a little bit on pre-saves one more time, just because it is new terrain for a lot of people. We had somebody come in and ask, what pre-save companies specifically do you think would be best to use? I know pre-saves are great, but specifically, is there a site or a service that you like to set up these pre-saves ahead of releasing new music? Does anything come to mind, just to touch on that really quickly?
I've used various. I can't quite answer which I think is best, but the one that has the least clicks is what I'll tell you. Some of them, sometimes when I'm saving my friends, like you go in and you press one button, it's literally pre-saved. The minute that you get one of those ones where they're like, put in your email, and the people just tune out. They're like, I don't want to be spammed, so I'm not going to put in my email. So just find something that's literally the most convenient. People have a ridiculously short attention span. So one click wonder if you can.
I will say on that though, in terms of the email address, yes, we all think that's annoying. At the same, and I think you want to test those out, because if on the flip side of that, if someone is willing to take the time to give you that information, they're most likely a diehard fan, or they want to be a diehard fan. So again, maybe not all the time, because we all hate that, right? And you want to make it as frictionless as possible. You want to get them right to the music. But it does depend, right? If you know that you've already developed a pretty solid fan base, but now you're looking to start gathering their data, maybe it makes sense to ask for that. But also just be like open and honest. If you are asking for that, let them know, like, yo, I'm not going to spam you, like only going to send you good shit. Something to like let them know you understand what they're going through. But you do want that, because like that gives you that direct relationship with the fan. Now, if you're talking, and the reason that makes sense is because when you look at, your engagement levels on social media, you're lucky if you get 1 or 2%, right, of people like commenting or liking on your things. This isn't 6, 7, 8 years ago when you were just getting crazy numbers. There's so many people doing it now, they just can't do that. Whereas you look at your email list, your open rate is gonna be 15, 20%, right? Just they're already going to open the email. So that just allows that connection and that relationship to grow stronger. So just some food for thought as you are, trying to think of the best method.
I just sent a quick link. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry. I'm sorry. No, you go first. I'm still processing how I'm going to say it in my head. So please, after you.
I just sent a quick link so people can get an example. I distributed my last single with FLAVIA, who have been great. But if you click the link there, you'll see that I actually have a stay tuned tab, so you can subscribe, and then a link to pretty much anywhere you can stream it. And that way, instead of, you don't know when you're sending, your music out, whether someone uses Apple Music or Spotify or Tidal or Deezer. And so in one click, you can offer someone, you can have one generic link that you send around where anybody can click their specific DSP and can also subscribe. And sometimes with these, you can actually track how many people are clicking, what they're clicking into, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, so you can track where most of your listeners are. So I strongly recommend. I do this for my pre-saves. This is the same link before the song goes live. I have all these. You can pre-order on iTunes. You can subscribe. You can subscribe to my YouTube. You can pre-save on Spotify. And then when the song goes live, all these links become now active. But I highly recommend. There are so many companies that do this now, and that's huge, because sometimes I'll send out to European fans, Spotify, and they're like, oh, we only listen to Deezer, or some countries don't even have Spotify. So that is like a huge, highly recommend.
Awesome.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. I know.
Oh, thank you. It just got me thinking, the comment about less clicks. One thing on top of that is we now have voice assistants and smart speakers and smart devices in our homes. It's getting to the point now where I hope nobody's Alexa goes off, but you're going to be able to say, Alexa, follow this artist, and then Alexa pre-save the new single from artist X, which means it's as simple as a quick 10-second video on your social media telling everyone, hey, you don't need to click any buttons or do anything. You just need to tell Alexa or Google or whatever device you have in your home. And then those devices will remind you the day of, the first time you speak to them that day, they will tell you there's a new song from this artist you're following that's out. And what better time than when they're engaged and speaking with that device to say, yes, I would like to hear that right now, actually add it to my playlist. The other side of that is emails are extremely valuable. There are other products out there like Community, which is a lot of artists are starting to do this now. And not just that, comedians, actors saying, text me. I could see it getting to the point where an artist says, do you want to be one of the first to hear my new track? Text me on this number. And then the text comes back, obviously with the pre-save link. But then you can say, by the way, are you happy to continue hearing from me? I'll send you the occasional text. And then you're directly into their phone now, not just their email, which is still extremely valuable, but it's another way that you can reach them and potentially be pinging them quicker than sending them an email too. So it's exciting. There's a lot of different ways that I'm seeing artists being creative right now. I mean, I've seen artists go and spend their marketing budget creating a video of them teaching their Alexa devices how to say their artist name. And just a lot of fun, creative stuff like that can even, you could upload that video to TikTok and you could get 1 million views on there if it's funny enough. And everyone now knows how to request your music from Alexa or whatever smart device they have in their home.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
I was going to say, to jump onto Mike's point there too about the texting, like such early days for that. It's like such a smart thing to do because it's not like email, right? Email is great, but if you can get into that text, that's such early days. Like people are going to respond to that. They're going to engage with that because, you know, for the most part, it was funny. I saw Drake posted something on social media like last week or something like that. And it was a message from his text thread. And it said he had like 580 like unread texts. It's like only people like Drake have that many unread texts. For the most part, you know, the average person only has a couple of texts. And so they want those texts, right? And so they're looking for that connection. And I just think it's an awesome time to do that. Again, be mindful of it and make sure that you're providing value to that end user. You're not just pinging them for bullshit. Like really make sure that it's something that is of value to them.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And just to paraphrase from what's been going on in the chat really quickly, just an FYI to release any tension of people missing out on links or updates. Number one, this will be recorded. So we'll be able to share this recording after the fact with all the attendees, and it'll be up online shortly after the event concludes here. And number two, we'll make sure to follow up in a follow-up email, thanking everybody, including information for all of the panelists to stay in touch with what they're up to and what they're working on, as well as some of the relevant links that FLAVIA and other people have shared throughout the event. So we'll make sure to get all that info just congregated into one email for everybody for a really simple reference point. But I think we've got time for one more question before we wrap things up. Apologies to everybody for all the fantastic questions that have come through. I'm sorry we don't have enough time, but if you would like, you know, like I said, we'll be following up again. I'm happy to take any additional questions via email and distribute it to these lovely folks just in case they have the time to answer at a future date. But just to kind of put a bow on everything, I think we've talked a lot about distribution. We've talked a lot about all of the different ways that we can go about, you know, getting playlisted for the first time. We've also lost Mr. Mike Warner, it seems, but I'm sure he'll be back shortly. So just moving forward, I wanted to kind of wrap all of this up by asking if you all could summarize for us what, in your point of view, a well-done strategy for releasing a song looks like. What are the steps or the things that must be done nowadays when releasing, let's just say, one track, in order to really feel like it is in every position it needs to be to see success? So would you be able to just give me your opinion on that? Mike, I don't know if you missed that real quickly, but we're talking about what is the best summarization of a well-done strategy for releasing a song right now in 2020 with the idea of playlisting as the end goal.
Yeah, look, it's a point that we kind of touched on earlier that Murph mentioned as well, which is you really need to separate the process. You need to finish that song before you even start thinking about playlists. Otherwise, the song is going to change. Your creative process will be tested, and the song may not end up sounding how you intended. So once you finish that song, then start the process of planning for the release. Everyone's got their own lead time. I say the more lead time, the better for a release. Ideally, someone like me, I say 10 weeks is fantastic, because usually in the first 2 weeks, you realize I don't like the mix, or, oh, the artwork doesn't look quite right. And now you're down to 8 weeks. And then you can still upload that to the distributor. Some of the DSPs require significant lead time, and I won't say which ones because I know it changes all the time, but some of them will actually need at least 4 weeks if they're looking to feature a song, because they need to create artwork. It needs to get passed around to the various teams, but you could be looking at a homepage takeover just because you had enough lead time, versus if you put the track up and then you're releasing it in 5 days from now, it's pretty safe to say no one is going to get the chance to hear it before. So give yourself time, and once you've actually done this, you'll start to have a process. And for me, it's a to-do list on my phone, and I check everything off in order. And then when the next release is ready, I remove the check from all of them and I start again. And that's really helped me to keep my sanity and to make sure that I don't miss anything in the process. And then, like FLAVIA mentioned about the sheet with all of the curators that you reach out to that have supported you before, definitely go back to them first and give them the first listen, you know, show them that you appreciate them. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to do that, and no one else will be upset that you've done that. You know, just showing that you appreciate them and thanking them can get you so far versus just doing a generic blast out to everyone. So you need to make time in the strategy for that, to get it out to people, give them time to actually listen. And then of course, once it's out, then you're going to be telling people once again, but lead time is really key.
Yeah, I pretty much, you kind of want to get all your, you know, ducks in a row. I, you know, take time to finish the song, have a great song, great mix, finish that up, great artwork. A few weeks before the release, I have a similar spreadsheet with all the different publications that have written me up, reaching out to a ton of blogs to try and get as many write-ups, as many Q&A interviews about your single, about your project. Once it all comes out, have all the social assets already ahead of time. What are the 8 photos you're going to post on social media leading up to the single to promote it? What are the 5 photos you're going to promote once it's done? Everything's moving so quickly once it's actually out that you want to have, at least for me, I like to have everything, you know, ready so that when it's out, I can just be releasing this content. Following that, are you going to do a music video? Are you going to do a lyric video? How are you going to maximize this piece of, you know, this single or this piece of art to stretch it as far as it can, so that, you know, 3 weeks after the single's released, then you're finally releasing a music video and you're getting the same blogs doing a ton of write-ups on that and Q&A on the process of, you know, the making of the video, and as an indie artist, how to stretch, you know, a DIY budget. So just try and think outside the box and find all these creative ways to make one project go so much further. And, you know, maybe you release a second version that's featuring someone. Maybe you then do 3 remixes, and one song can literally go, you know, for 2-3 months or more if you find different ways to get creative with it. But I just think, I think it's not enough anymore just to release a single. And I think also be ready if you're lucky enough for the single to blow up. I know so many people that had just made music in their bedroom and had never performed live, and all of a sudden their music blew up and they were getting tour opportunities and they had no idea how to perform live. So be ready, you know, simultaneously be figuring out, if you play instruments, be practicing that, be figuring out kind of a live set. How is your live set going to differ? You know, when I was first starting out, I didn't have the funds to afford a full band. So I figured out like a 1-woman show where I play synth and drum pad and trigger drums and vocal samples, and just like played around for weeks trying to figure out like, how can I do this on my own without having to go out of pocket for all the shows that I'm playing. So get creative and have fun with it.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from what Flavia said was, this is work, right? And like, don't take this lightly.
So much
I
work.
mean that, yeah, it really is. But like, it's at the same time, it's good to know that going in, right? You understand what it's really going to take to make this your career, and if you are serious about it, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take putting in that time and effort and planning, and not just doing stuff off the cuff and, you know, trying to let it fly. If you know that you're not great at planning, you got to find a manager, a teammate that can help keep you on track, a project manager to help keep you on track so that you can start to hit these goals. But again, in doing all this stuff, it's just going to prep you for when the song does blow up. If it's the third or fourth or second or third or fourth album, right? You want that to happen. You want that lead time of like dealing with all the crappy shit, so you know what works and what doesn't work, so that when you get to that point, it's just fuel to the fire. So just a quick hit. I'm going to start like super basic. I wrote down a whole bunch of notes here for this. Like, a bunch of us, you're first starting out, you don't have any money, make sure you got a little side hustle, you got a little money coming in, and start just chipping away at that, right? Setting a little bit of money to the side to help out where you can. That's great. Save some of that. A great tactic is trying to find a feature for your song, right? And that goes by like, go on to Spotify, go to like your favorite artist, scroll to the bottom of the page, look for similar artists. They now have it on the side, actually. Look for similar artists and keep going down that rabbit hole till you find somebody that's like a peg or two above you that, hey, you could probably get for $500-$600 to feature, but they have a bunch of stuff moving on the platform. So that's a great little hack. Then you can take that and you can then leverage that to get a press look, you know. And then if you do have somebody that is starting to move, look up all the sites that they've got covered on. Then go find those writers who wrote about those artists and say, hey, I got a new song with so-and-so. Do you think you could premiere it? And again, then take that, leverage that back to the DSPs. Say, hey, I got this song with this artist. We're getting premiered by this site. You know, I think you could work on these playlists, and then go from there. And then, just like Flavia said, make sure you're still working that song when it comes out. Even if you don't get all those things that I just mentioned, you still got to work the song. It comes out, you got to make a remix, you got to shoot a video, do a lyric video, whatever you can to kind of, you know, help that song continue to live. And then get ready to do shows, because that's where you're going to make your money. So you should really be striving towards that. And yeah, so I know we're kind of short on time, so I'm trying to rush through this fast.
Sorry guys, I gotta hop off. I have an 11 o'clock.
That's okay. Flavia, if you have anything you want to promote real quick before we say goodbye, we're going to wrap up here, but I'll let you go first.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, my latest video and single just dropped, them on Trans Day Visibility. I sent the link here in the chat to check out the music video, and then above I sent the link where you can stream it on Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. So please go like, follow, support. All the stuff that we were just mentioning is really helpful for us indies.
We'll include that in the follow-up email to everybody too, so everybody has those links. Flavia, thank you for joining us. Fellas, I'll let you wrap up here too. Thanks for coming. We'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye,
Yeah, but just to wrap up, we'll let Murph and Mike tell what they've got going on really quick hit on what do you guys have that you're working on right now before we let everybody go.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead. I feel like I've been rambling a bunch.
I'm really enjoying it, man. It's like looking into a mirror sometimes. I'm like, damn, why have we not spoken before? It's just,
yeah, seriously.
It's good fun. Yeah, look, for me, it's the book is out. I guess shameless plug time, paperback, hardcover, and Zoom is cropping it out there, but this is actually a book in my hand. The book is called Work Hard, Playlist Hard. You can buy it in most bookstores worldwide, paperback, hardcover, ebook, Kindle, all that. It's on my website for any artists that are finding themselves in a tough place right now. If you go to workhardplaylisthard.com/book, there's a coupon code there so you can get a free copy of it. I encourage anyone that is in a position right now where they are struggling, please help yourself. I want to help. Outside of that, I've been just doing a lot of fun things like this, just trying to reach as many people as I can and give them some free advice and try and set them up for that long-term success. So, you know, I can't actually type into the chat right now the way I'm set up. So this looks ridiculous, but I'm going to hold up the t-shirt that I wear when I'm at conferences that has my social media handle on there. So I don't know if this is going to work or not, probably not, but
Oh, there you go,
So
right there.
It's Ask Mike Warner, and I'm not selling this. It's not merch. No one wants my social media handle. But please follow me. Ask Mike Warner. Ask me questions. That's exactly what I'm there for, and I'm more than happy to help. If there's questions you're too scared to ask, don't be, because there's probably hundreds of other people that have the same question. And I see that someone said they'll wear the shirt. Fantastic. I guess I'll have to find someone who wants to print it. But look, thank you so much for this. I do appreciate this opportunity, and to meet everyone, and to meet, everyone here. I've said too much. I'm done.
Thanks, Mike. We'll include the link. Mike has been generous enough to offer a promo code specifically for people attending this webinar from Sofar to access that ebook for free. Brilliant read. Definitely covers a lot of the things we've been talking about here, and it's completely free. So you can take a look. We'll include that in the follow-up email as well. And then finally, Mr. Murphy, feel free to wrap things up for us. What you got going on?
Yeah, for sure. Again, appreciate the opportunity here. Just like Mike said, this is awesome. Been following Sofar for such a long time, and what you guys do for artists is it's awesome. And I think this is just an extension of it, and it shows the level of professionalism and care that you guys have for this community. So I just thank you. And then in terms of my stuff, just get at me on social media at Studio Talk CO. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the same thing. Hit me on Instagram there. If you want to set up a call, there's a link in the bio there. Set up a call. Just like Mike said, happy to help. Like, that's what we're here for, down to just spitball ideas for you, and really just kind of help you brainstorm and answer any questions that you may be dealing with. And yeah, just really gearing up for a lot more. I also have a podcast called the Unsigned podcast to interview, friends of mine in the industry. And the goal of that is really to just be a how-to resource. A lot of podcasts are out there, and it's like, hey, we're going to talk to this executive for 2 hours and kind of leave it up to you to pull out the gems. And my goal is to just streamline that and make it more impactful, because we're all short on time these days. So yeah, get at me there. And again, appreciate everybody for signing up and giving Sofar your email address. I think that's awesome. And yeah, thanks for coming through, and thanks for letting me talk too much.
Thanks, Murph. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, FLAVIA. It's been an absolute joy to have you all here. Definitely learned a bunch. And like I mentioned before, we'll be following up with the recording with all the helpful links and social media for you to stay in touch with these fine folks. Also, keep in mind, we have a schedule of events coming up through May at this point, and more being added every single week. So really exciting stuff coming up in terms of these Sofar webinar events. Next week, we'll be talking with industry legend, Paradigm Talent Agency, Mr. Tom Windish, in conversation with Sofar co-founder Rafe Offer. So it'll be a really, really fun conversation to dive into. I'm excited to be a part of it next week, Thursday, the 23rd at 2 p.m. Eastern. There'll be a link to register for that in the follow-up email. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you to our panelists, and really excited for what's to come. Hope everybody has an opportunity to get playlisted in the near future, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks again for joining, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Peace.